you are speaking off the cuff, Mr. Trump. That's actually one of his appeals, that he's not a scripted politician. With regard to this specific account with abortion, Mr. Trump did provide a statement, two actually, one on the proposed ban, because at first, Megan, the media frenzy was that Trump called for a ban on abortion, which in fact he did not. That was the original statement about leaving it to the states. And the second statement was with regard to women, where he wanted to clarify that he does not support punishing women for having an illegal abortion.
Why did he say he did? Because what his critics say is it shows he hasn't thought the issue through, and this is not something that he's given any real consideration to.
Well, his critics are going to say anything at this point. We know there's a full-blown anti-Trump movement going on. We know that the full-blown mainstream media, as we saw with Chris Matthews, everyone is out to try and stop Donald Trump from winning the nomination.
Was the question unfair?
These aren't issues. No, not at all. Mr. Trump answered the question. He just answered it after Chris Matthews said, but for women, and he just said yes, because Mr. Trump was speaking about the legality. This was a hypothetical context of something happening that was illegal. Mr. Trump was just reinstating, yes, if something's illegal, they should be punished. And then that's why he clarified for distinguishing the difference between the woman and the actual person committing the procedure that was not legal.
All right, welcome back to the program. Trump clarified in saying that he believed that the doctor should be punished for performing the abortion, but not the would-be mother. Absolutely not the would-be mother. I'm joined now by Diana West. You can find her at dianawest.net. She's the author of American Betrayal and also Death of the Grown-Up. Welcome to the program.
Welcome. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good, but I got to say I was torn up yesterday over this. I think Donald Trump was caught in what's going to be a big problem for him going forward. What do you think?
Well, what I've been watching with every increasingly short 24/7 news cycle, if you know what I mean, is that whether the charge is legitimate or illegitimate, the news cycle goes on in terms of the wilding against this man, the media burning at the stake. So, the abortion issue is always a fascinating and close to the bone moral issue to debate and have these kinds of conversations on, which I think are important. What I would say about it, yes, it could turn out to be that way if it continues to be distorted in terms of what he said, that this was a hypothetical discussion about an America that I'm afraid will never exist. Abortion will not become illegal in this country. This was a college 4 a.m. intense discussion where Chris Matthews was seriously pressing for an answer on a hypothetical situation. If you believe abortion is murder, if you believe that there is a time and place to discuss a hypothetical situation where abortion against the law, well, yes, quote, as Donald Trump said, some punishment for abortion becomes certainly something you put on the table. After all, we pay a fine for staying at a parking meter too long. So I think in terms of understanding this as a going scot-free for abortion in a land where it is considered murder by the law is of course consistent. So if this is ever understood in terms of what the conversation was like, no, but that's not the game that's being played. So it could be dangerous. Or, and just to finish up the thought, which is that once again, I do believe Donald Trump has exposed the hypocrisy at the heart of the conservative movement. Because if religious conservatives in particular, social conservatives in particular, are actually serious about pressing that abortion is murder and should be against the law should be changed, not just the culture in terms of sensitizing people to the issue so that women do not seek abortions, but that it is against the law, then of course, quote, some punishment is not an outrageous statement. It is only a logical and moral statement. And it could be a parking ticket. I mean, when we're talking some punishment or something serious. And if it is against the law, there are going to be situations where, yes, someone was non-compos mentis, someone was underage, someone was pressured, someone was, out of her mind. Of course, there are going to be extenuating circumstances. But you know what? Abortion is used as birth control. Abortion is used as a matter of convenience so as not to disturb a vacation. I mean, there are situations where women, for example, the writer Amanda Marcotte thinks that getting a tooth out is worse than an abortion and has said if her birth control control ever failed, she would certainly seek to have an abortion rather than have her life dominated by, quote, time-sucking monsters or some such. I mean, there are situations where abortion becomes, wow, maybe some punishment, maybe even a parking ticket in a world where abortion is considered murder by law is not crazy.
Okay, I'm making a note here that next time I need to pick a topic that you feel strongly about.
We've never discussed it. Actually, I have never thought these things through either. You know, that's one of the other charges. Clearly, he hasn't thought this thing through. Well, you know what? Abortion is not one of the issues I typically write about. It had never occurred to me. The punishment story I had never seen discussed in my
but here's the thing. He's smarter than that. I would hope that he's smarter than that. I would hope that he would say back to Chris Matthews, well, Chris, you just made abortion illegal. So if you're making abortion illegal, then why wouldn't there be a punishment, Chris?
Well,
do you know what I mean? And put it back on him, or refuse to discuss it. I don't know how he got trapped in it. And here's the problem: now he's walking it back, and he's saying no punishment for the woman. Well, I'm sorry, but if a woman hires a man to kill her husband, is she above the law because she didn't kill her husband? She just hired the guy to kill her husband.
Sure. No, I'm totally with you. We're looking at a political vortex where you see the war on women narrative.
Yes, they caught him.
Hit hard on him. I'm sorry he walked it back. Of course.
No, but he needs to know better than to get trapped in that, right? You remember Stephanopoulos, that really insane question about a state's right to deny
birth control
contraception. That was the first. It was this inane question. Even Mitt Romney, when he was and he was targeted with the question, and he's like, "Well, I don't even know why we're even talking about this." That was the beginning of the war on women. That's what launched the whole thing. And I look at this question, and I look at Donald Trump stepping in, and I go, "Well, there we go."
You know what? This is not a I beg to differ here, because the conversation, the transcript, which was put up online by PolitiFact, thank you, PolitiFact. It's a very good service because the media has distorted this so relentlessly. It's a very long exchange. It's a very intense exchange. It's actually quite fascinating. You see Matthews pressing for this answer in this hypothetical world, probably seeking to get this as a trophy to be used in the war on women.
Yeah.
I mean, Matthews is a very seasoned operative going back many, many years. However, you also see Trump talking, well, what about you? You say you're a Catholic. Your church teaches against it. You know, you see this back and forth. He's trying to also push back on this. Finally, Matthews say, hey, come on, let's have an answer. So he says, yes, some punishment in this hypothetical world. This is the context of the conversation. If you read it, I'm sure when Donald Trump had it, he wasn't thinking this is going to be made into a new scandal. It's not. Read the conversation. We should live in a world where politicians can think out loud. Frankly, the President of the United States is just simply not going to be making this kind of decision in his work as president, except insofar as Donald Trump is pro-life, with certain exceptions, and has made this very clear that this will reflect his thinking in picking constitutional originalists who do not believe that the Supreme Court is the place to legislate abortion. He wants to turn it back to the states. So as far as his presidential candidacy, nothing changes. This just becomes simply another moving target. I mean, gosh, I would have thought at the beginning of the week that we would have been having there are like several other fires that burned this week before we get to Friday to talk to you and I. And so it's just another part of this game. So, I really hope that people look at this more widely than simply the way the media uses its latest little club and cudgel, and including the right. Because again, I really think just as on immigration, Trump exposed the hypocrisy of the right, I think on abortion, you and I have not had a conversation like this in all the years we've been talking. I have never had this kind of thinking. I mean, that's my own flaw, but in the sense that this has never been discussed, not even by the most religiously motivated pro-life people. I have never heard this. It's a cogent, moral, logical, and legal argument to at least have without being killed.
Yeah, I would argue that the real story is the opposite side of this, where Matthews says, because I have it up here, Trump says, and with the loss of, where is it now? Matthew says, I know, I never understood the pro-life position. And Trump says, well, a lot of people do understand. And Matthew said, I never understood it because I understand the principle. It's human life as people see it. And Trump says, which it is. And Matthews said, but what crime is it? And Trump says, well, it's human life. There's Matthews who's saying, just because you think that somebody's killing somebody doesn't mean we should do anything about it. Like to me, that's the story in this.
Yes, it is. It very much is, and it's a fascinating
Maybe we should
story.
elect. Yeah. Maybe we should elect the newscasters because they're the ones that have the ear of the people.
Right. Well, they're the ones who are trying to pick who we elect. That's for sure. But I think it's quite fascinating because I read this and I see, okay, Trump seems extremely pro-life to me. I do not see a man waffling. I see Chris Matthews waffling. He tells us he's pro-life. I mean, I think it's a very fascinating and useful and positive exchange in so many ways. If the media weren't so corrupt and so deeply twisted at this point, I've been covering this stuff for decades now. I have never seen a more poisonous media.
I know. I've seen your lexicon of anti-Trump rhetoric. It is quite fascinating. Diana West, thanks for coming on. Lenore Hawkins.